There is a specific kind of silence that lives in a house when two people have been together for a long time. It isn't the heavy, jagged silence of an argument, nor is it the awkward silence of strangers. It's something different, a quiet, humming background noise made of shared habits, predictable routines, and the unspoken assumption that everything is exactly as it should be. It's the silence of a clock ticking on a wall you've stopped looking at, or the hum of a refrigerator. You only notice when it suddenly cuts out. For a long time, I thought that silence was the sound of peace. I thought it was the goal. But that night, as I sat on the corner of our charcoal gray sofa, I realized that silence wasn't peace at all. It was a fog, and we were both lost in it. Before I take you into the heart of that evening, I want to ask you something. Do you believe that the smallest moments are often the most significant? Do you think a single sentence whispered in the dark can hold more weight than 1,000 shouted promises? If you find beauty in the quiet complexities of the human heart, if you value the stories that happen in the spaces between the big events, then I'm glad you're here. This channel is a place for those reflections. If you haven't already, consider joining our community by subscribing. It helps these stories find the people who are currently standing in their own fog, wondering which way to turn. And if you've ever felt a shift in your life that no one else noticed, hit that like button and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I read every single one of them. Now, let's settle in. The evening began like 1,000 others. The sun had dipped below the horizon, leaving the sky a bruised purple before settling into a deep velvety black. Outside, a light rain began to tap against the window pane, a rhythmic, soothing sound that usually made me feel safe. Inside, the lamps were dimmed, casting warm, amber pools of light across the hardwood floors. Elias was at the other end of the couch. He was focused on a tablet, his thumb rhythmically swiping up, his face illuminated by the cool blue glow of the screen. I was holding a book, but I hadn't turned a page in 20 minutes. I was watching him. I was tracing the familiar lines of his profile, the way his brow slightly furrowed when he was reading something interesting, the salt and pepper hair at his temples that seemed to have appeared overnight, the steady rise and fall of his chest. I knew him so well. I knew his favorite meal, his coffee order, the way he looked when he was about to catch a cold, and the specific sigh he gave when he was frustrated with work. We were a well-oiled machine. Our lives were synchronized. We navigated the kitchen like a choreographed dance, moving around one another without ever bumping into a shoulder or stepping on a toe. We were a success story by every traditional metric, but as I sat there, the air in the room felt strangely thin. I looked around at our beautiful home, the framed photos of vacations, the expensive rug we debated over for 3 weeks, the plants I meticulously watered every Sunday. It was a perfect set for a play that had been running for too many seasons. We knew our lines, we knew our cues. But I couldn't remember the last time we'd gone off script. I couldn't remember the last time we'd looked at each other and felt. The genuine spark of curiosity. Elias shifted, stretching his legs out. Without taking his eyes off the screen, he reached over and rested a hand on my knee. It was a gesture of affection, a tethering point, but it felt automatic. It felt like something he did because that's what husbands do when they're sitting on a couch with their wives. I looked at his hand brought familiar, the gold band of his wedding ring catching the lamplight. A wave of profound loneliness washed over me, so sudden and sharp that it took my breath away. How was it possible to be this close to someone and feel like you were shouting from across a canyon? The television was playing some nature documentary on low volume. I watched a predator stalk its prey through tall grass, the tension on the screen mirroring the tightening in my own chest. Elias finally looked up, his eyes meeting mine for a fleeting second. He gave me a quick, distracted smile, the kind you give a pleasant coworker in the break room, and then he leaned over and kissed the top of my head. It was a soft, dry kiss. Efficient, routine. Then he went back to his tablet. That kiss was the catalyst. It wasn't that it was a bad kiss. It was that it was a finished kiss. There was no lingering, no inquiry, no heat. It was a period at the end of a sentence that had been repeated so many times it had lost its meaning. I felt a sudden, irrational urge to stand up and shake him, to break the beautiful, expensive glass of our life just to see if he'd react, but I didn't. I just sat there, my heart hammering against my ribs. I began to think back to the early years. I remembered a time when we lived in a cramped, drafty apartment with mismatched furniture and a heater that clanked like a ghost in the walls. We had nothing then, but we had everything. We would stay up until 3 a.m. talking about things that didn't matter, our favorite childhood movies, our fears of failure, the weird dreams we'd had the night before. Back then, we were explorers. Every conversation was a journey into the other person's soul. We were hungry for each other's thoughts. We would look at each other across a crowded room, and it felt like a secret language was being spoken. Now, we talked about the mortgage. We talked about the grocery list. We talked about his brother's upcoming wedding or the leak in the upstairs bathroom. We talked about the what and the how, but we had completely stopped talking about the why. Elias, I said. My voice sounded strange in the quiet room, small and fragile. He didn't hear me at first. The swiping continued. Elias, I said again, a little louder this time. He paused, his thumb hovering over the glass. He turned his head slowly, looking at me with a mixture of confusion and mild concern. Yeah? Everything okay? You need the remote? No, I said, tucking my hair behind my ear. I don't need the remote. He set the tablet down on the coffee table. The blue light vanished, replaced by the soft orange glow of the lamps. He shifted his body toward me, giving me his full attention. This was the moment. The threshold. I could say, never mind. I could ask him what he wanted for breakfast tomorrow, and we could slide right back into the comfortable, suffocating safety of our routine. The fog was inviting. It was warm. It didn't require anything of me. But if I stayed in it, I knew that 10 years from now, I'd look in the mirror and realize I'd become a stranger to myself. I've been thinking, I started. I looked down at my hands, picking at a loose thread on my sweater. Do you feel like we're actually here, together? Elias blinked. What do you mean? I'm right here, Maya. We're on the couch. We're having an evening. I know, I said, trying to find the right words. But it feels like we're just playing the parts. We do the things. We say the words. We have the stability. But I miss the version of us that wasn't so stable. I miss the version of us that was actually interested in who the other person was becoming. He was silent for a long time. I expected him to get defensive. I expected him to list all the things he did for us, the long hours at the office, the way he took care of the cars, the fact that he was a good man. And he was a good man. That was what made it so hard. There was nothing wrong to point to. There was no betrayal, no cruelty, no grand disaster. There was just the slow, silent erosion of intimacy. Instead of arguing, he leaned back and sighed. It wasn't an annoyed sigh. It was a heavy one, full of a weariness I hadn't noticed before. I thought you liked the quiet, Maya. I thought after. All the chaos of our younger years, this was what we were working toward. I thought if there wasn't any drama, it meant we'd made it. We did make it, I said, moving closer to him, reaching for his hand. This time, when I took his hand, I didn't just hold it. I felt it. I felt the calluses on his palm and the warmth of his skin. We built something incredible. But I don't want to just live in the building, Elias. I want to live in the relationship. I feel like I'm losing sight of you. I feel like I'm looking at a photograph of my husband instead of the man himself. He looked at our joined hands, his thumb tracing my knuckles just like he'd done 1,000 times before. But this time it was slow, deliberate. I felt it too, he whispered. The admission seemed to cost him something. I thought it was just me. I thought maybe this is just what happens when you've been married this long. You stop being new to each other, so you just settle into the furniture. Is that enough for you? I asked. He looked up at me, and for the first time in years, I saw the man I had married. Not the provider, not the roommate, but Elias. His eyes were wide and vulnerable, stripped of the professional mask he wore so well. No, he said, his voice cracking slightly. It's not. I'm tired of being comfortable, Maya. I'm tired of pretending that fine is the same thing as happy. A profound sense of relief flooded through me. The truth hadn't broken us. It had cracked the shell we'd built around ourselves, allowing the air back in. We didn't have a grand cinematic reconciliation. There were no tears of joy or dramatic music. Instead, we just talked. We talked for 3 hours. We talked about the things we'd been afraid to say. He told me he felt pressured to be the rock and that he'd forgotten how to be a person. I told him I felt like I was being curated rather than loved. We stayed up until the rain stopped, and the first hints of gray light began to pull the world out of the shadows. It was the most exhausted I had felt in years, and yet I felt more awake than I had in a decade. The weeks that followed were in a magical transformation. You don't undo years of habit overnight, but something fundamental had changed. We became intentional. It started with small things. We made a rule, no screens after 8 p.m. At first, it was awkward. We'd sit in the silence and realize we didn't know what to do with our hands. But then, slowly, the conversation started to flow again. Not about the mortgage, but about the books we were reading. About the things that made us angry. About the things that made us laugh. I remember one Tuesday afternoon, a few weeks after that night on the couch. I was in the kitchen trying to follow a complicated recipe for a lemon tart. I was frustrated, flour dusted across my forehead, the kitchen a disaster zone. Elias walked in from work, his tie loosened, looking tired. In the old world, he would have asked, "What's for dinner?" Or, "How was your day?" And then retreated to his office dot, but that day he stopped. He looked at me, really looked at me. He saw the flour, the frustration, the chaotic energy of the room. He didn't say a word. He walked over, took the whisk out of my hand, and set it on the counter. Then he pulled me into his arms and just held me. It wasn't a routine hug. It was a choice. I buried my face in his shoulder, smelling the rain and the office and the scent that was uniquely him. We stood there for a long time, the lemon tart forgotten, the world outside continuing its frantic pace while we stood perfectly still. "I see you, Maya," he whispered into my hair. "I see you too," I replied. We began to rediscover each other in the most mundane ways. We started taking walks in the evening, wandering through the neighborhood without a destination. We talked about the houses we liked and the gardens that were overgrown. We started asking each other real questions again. What are you most afraid of right now? If you could change one thing about your daily life, what would it be? When was the last time you felt truly proud of yourself? It was like learning a foreign language we had once been fluent in, but had forgotten through disuse. There were stumbles. There were moments when we retreated back into our shells. But the difference was that we now knew the way out. We had a map. I realized that love isn't a destination you reach and then just sit down in. It's a garden that requires constant weeding. It's a fire that needs to be fed. Stability is a wonderful thing, but stability without intimacy is just a well-maintained cage. I'd spent so much time worrying about preserving what we had that I'd forgotten to let it grow. One Saturday morning, Elias surprised me. He packed a bag and told me to get in the car. He didn't tell me where we were going. We drove for 2 hours, leaving the suburbs behind and winding up into the mountains. He pulled over at a trailhead we used to hike when we were first dating. The last time we were here, I had to carry you across the creek because your boots leaked, he said, grinning. And you complained the whole way, I reminded him, laughing. We hiked for hours. We weren't as fast as we used to be. Our knees ached a bit more, and we had to stop to catch our breath more often. But as we sat at the summit, looking out over the valley, I felt a sense of peace that was entirely different from the contentment I'd felt on the couch. This peace was hard-earned. It was honest. It was rooted in the knowledge that we were choosing to be there, together, in the wind and the sun. Maya, Elias said, looking out at the horizon. I'm sorry I let the fire go out. I let it go out too, I said, leaning my head on his shoulder. We both did. We got comfortable with the dark. I don't want to go back to the dark, he said. Then we won't, I promised. We'll just keep lighting matches. That night, we went back to our beautiful home, but it didn't feel like a museum anymore. It felt like a home. The silence was gone, replaced by the low murmur of our voices as we cooked dinner together. We didn't do it perfectly. The chicken was a little dry, and we argued over which playlist to put on, but the argument felt alive. It was a friction that produced heat rather than a coldness that produced distance. I often think back to that moment when I almost didn't say anything. I think about how easy it would have been to just keep reading my book, to accept the automatic kiss, and to drift off into another year of autopilot. It's a frightening thought. How many of us are living lives that are fine, but not full? How many of us are waiting for a tragedy to wake us up, when all we really need is the courage to speak a small, uncomfortable truth? If you're listening to this and you feel that familiar tightness in your chest, if you feel like you're drifting through your own life, I want to tell you that it's okay to speak up. It's okay to tell the person you love that you miss them, even when they're sitting right next to you. Truth doesn't always have to be a wrecking ball. Sometimes it's just a window being opened in a room that's been closed for too long. Our story didn't change overnight. We still have days where we're tired and distracted. We still have moments where the routine tries to swallow us whole. But we have a new habit now. We check in. We look each other in the eye. We make sure that the words, I love you, aren't just a punctuation mark, but a declaration. The rain is falling again tonight as I record this. It's the same soothing sound against the glass, but inside, the silence is different. Elias is in the other room, and I can hear the muffled sound of him humming to himself. In a few minutes, I'll go in there and I'll ask him what he's thinking about, and I'll listen, really listen to the answer. Because I've learned that the greatest gift you can give someone isn't stability or security or a beautiful home. It's the simple, profound act of truly seeing them. If this story touched a part of you that's been feeling a bit quiet lately, I hope it gave you the spark you needed. You are the protagonist of your own life, and you have the power to change the narrative at any moment. You don't need a grand reason to want more from your relationships. Wanting to feel alive is reason enough. Thank you for spending this time with me. It's an honor to share these reflections with you. If you're still here, it means these quiet stories matter to you, and that means you belong here. Please subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next journey together. And if you have a moment, leave a comment. Tell me about a small truth that changed your life. I'd love to hear from you, as the night settles in. I want you to remember that the most important conversations are often the ones we're most afraid to start. But once the words are out, they belong to the air and you are free to breathe again. Take care of yourself. Take care of those you love, and never stop choosing the people who choose you. I'll be back soon with another story. Until then, keep looking for the light in the quiet moments. Goodnight. The world often tells us that love is about the big milestones, the wedding day, the purchase of a home, the birth of a child, the grand anniversaries. And those things are beautiful. But I've realized that the true substance of a long-term bond is found in the ordinary Tuesdays. It's found in the way you handle the silence after the guests have left. It's found in the way you look at each other when the excitement of the new has long since faded. In my studio apartment, I kept a small stone I'd found on that mountain hike with Elias. It's nothing special to look at, just a smooth gray pebble with a vein of white quartz running through it. But to me, it's a monument. It represents the moment we decided to stop drifting. It reminds me that even something as solid as a mountain is made of tiny individual stones, just as a life is made of tiny individual choices. I've started to notice this autopilot in other areas of my life too. I've noticed how often I walk through the park without looking at the trees, or how I eat my lunch while staring at a screen, not even tasting the food. I'm trying to wake up in all the small ways. I'm trying to be present for the cold air against my face, the taste of my morning coffee, and the sound of my own breath. Life is too short to be lived in a fog. It's too precious to be spent waiting for the right time to be happy. The right time is now. The right time is this very second. Even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's scary, it's always better to be awake. Elias and I are planning a trip soon. Not a luxury resort, not a curated experience, just a road trip. With a map and no reservations. We want to see where the road takes us when we aren't following a GPS. We want to see who we are when we're out of our element. I'm excited, but I'm also a little nervous. And I think that's a good thing. Nervous means you're on the edge of something. Nervous means you're alive. I used to be so afraid of change. I used to think that change meant loss. But now I see that the only real loss is stagnation. The only real failure is staying the same when your heart is begging you to move. As I look out my window at the city lights, I wonder how many other people are sitting on their couches tonight, feeling that same thinning of the air. I hope they find the words. I hope they realize that their partners are likely feeling it too. I hope they know that the silence can be broken, and that what lies on the other side is so much richer than the fog. I'm grateful for that ordinary evening. I'm grateful for the nature documentary, and the dry kiss, and the swiping on the tablet. Because without those things, I might never have reached my breaking point. I might still be sitting there, turning pages I wasn't reading, waiting for a life that was already happening to finally start. If you're listening to this, maybe this is your nature documentary moment. Maybe this is the nudge you need to put down the tablet and look at the person across from you. Or maybe it's the nudge you need to look at yourself. Either way, I'm glad we could share this space. There is a strange comfort in knowing that we are all navigating these waters together. We are all trying to figure out how to be human in a world that constantly asks us to be machines. We are all trying to keep the fire lit. Before I go, I want to leave you with a thought. Someone once told me that the most powerful thing you can say to someone isn't, "I love you, but I see you." To be loved is common, but to be truly seen is rare. So tomorrow, try to see someone, really see them. See their fatigue, their joy, their hidden fears, and their quiet hopes. And if you're lucky, they'll see you back. This is Maya signing off for now. May your silences be meaningful, your truths be spoken, and your hearts be wide open to the messy, beautiful reality of being alive. I'll talk to you again soon. Until then, take a deep breath, look around you, and step out of the fog. The world is waiting, And it's more beautiful than you remember. The rain has turned into a gentle mist now, the kind that clings to the leaves and makes everything look like a painting. I think I'll go for a walk. Not because I have to, but because I want to feel the mist on my skin. I want to be reminded that I am here, that I am real, and that the story is far from over. Every day is a new page. Every breath is a chance to rewrite the script. I'm glad I rewrote mine. I'm glad I spoke up. And I'm glad you were here to listen. It makes the journey feel a little less lonely. Good night, and take care. Be kind to yourself today, and even kinder to your heart. It's doing its best, just like you are. And remember, the quiet stories are often the ones that echo the loudest in the end. Keep listening, keep questioning, and keep choosing the life you actually want to live. I'll see you in the next one. As the final embers of the evening fade. I realize that the most profound change didn't happen in our house. It happened in me. I stopped waiting for someone else to make me feel alive and started taking responsibility for my own vibrancy. And in doing so, I gave Elias the space to do the same. We aren't just two people sharing a life anymore. We are two lives sharing a journey. And that, I've discovered, is the most beautiful thing of all. Peace isn't the absence of conflict. It's the presence of connection. And tonight, for the first time in a long time, the connection is strong. The signal is clear. The fog has lifted and the view is spectacular. I'll leave you with that. The view from the other side of the truth is always worth the climb. Whatever mountain you're facing, whatever silence you're trapped in, just take the first step. The rest will follow. I can hear the kettle whistling in the kitchen. Elias is making tea. 2 cups. One for him and one for me. It's a small thing. A tiny, ordinary ritual, but it's a choice. And that makes it everything. Goodbye for now. I'm going to go have a cup of tea with my husband. We have a lot to talk about. And I can't wait to hear what he has to say. The house is quiet, but it's a living silence now. A breathing silence. A silence that knows it's loved. And that's the best kind of silence there is. Take a moment for yourself tonight. Look in the mirror. See the person looking back. And then go see the people who matter. You won't regret it. Promise. Signing off with a heart full of stories and a soul that's finally found its voice. Talk to you soon.